right. Hello and welcome. This is episode 9 of Plays Well with Others. I'm Andrew Moore. As always, I'm joined by my illustrious co-host, Jess Agnew. And today, I wanted to dig into a topic that is very near and dear to my heart that Jess really dropped the mic on in the last episode. So if you haven't heard episode 8 and really episodes 7 and 8, because they're kind of sister episodes. Yes. So if you haven't heard both of those episodes, go back and listen to them. It's an hour total. Get in your car, drive off, and go pick up a pizza, go pick up your laundry, whatever, come back, and we'll be here waiting. But while you're doing that, I want you to go ahead and stop and rate, subscribe, give us all of the feedback you can give us on whatever app or whatever service you're listening to us on. It really helps to get the podcast out there and get the engagement that we're looking for. But what Jess left us with in episode 8 was really the conglomeration of everything we've been trying to do in this podcast so far, which is this idea of building leaders and building this idea that you can be a manager, you can be an individual contributor or whatever you are, but you have the capability within yourself to be a leader regardless of your title, regardless of your role. And the thing I wanted to dig into today is how, as an individual contributor, or as really, regardless of what your title is or regardless of what your role is, how you can be a leader. And in similar fashion to episodes 7 and 8, I texted Jess this morning with a prompt of kind of what I wanted to talk about, and she came back to this episode with a not entirely different bent, but a slightly different context. Different sides of the same coin that we've said before. So I want to start us off today with I'll say a strong statement. As if you've listened to either my individual content or this podcast for any length of time, you'll understand that community is very important to me. And I've used the term trichotomy of community. So you have your geographical community where you live, and you have your work community, the people you work with. And it's 2023, so that could be Cleveland, Ohio, or it could be Nashville, Tennessee, or it could be San Francisco. India, exactly. Yeah. Or you have the third aspect, which is your social community. So your social media, your Facebook, your Instagram, your Twitter, those are often far flung across the world. And you have investment in each of those in some capacity. And when we talk about leadership, I want to set the stage that each of you, whether you're listening or not, has the capability or the capacity to provide value back to your community, any one of those 3 communities. So you hear this a lot when we talk about examples for content creation. So everybody has something to provide. In bygone eras, you see this in people that talk at the store. You have people that are neighbors or live down the road from you, all geographic community. You gain benefit from understanding each other's trials, each other's knowledge, experience, whatever. But now we have this capability of expanding beyond our street, our county, our state, our country, which is huge. It
really is mind-boggling when you think about it.
It absolutely is. And the fact that, even just as an example, Jess and I are filming this podcast. I think it would take me like 2 hours to drive to your house.
Something like that, yeah.
It depends on what time of day it is. We're in the really greater Nashville area. We got to go all the way across Nashville. But if you consider the capability and the value that the internet's provided us, it's given us this ability to really say anything we want out loud and bring
Use it with caution.
Exactly. Great power brings great responsibility. But
Yes, Spider-Man's uncle was right.
but it gives us this ability to bring a perspective to a greater audience. And I want to the strong statement I want to make is each of you, no matter what your title is, what your job is, whether you're a senior software engineer or a product owner or a accountant or business owner, entrepreneur, what have you, you have something to contribute, and something from your experience can be valuable to somebody that has an entirely different business. And so I'm going to let Jess opine a little bit here because, again, we're different sides of the same coin with me being engineering and her being product. But I want to encourage everyone out there not just to create content, because that's kind of my personal standard to bear, but from a plays well with others standpoint, from a business optimization standpoint, we have the capability to really gain value from a lot of different experiences and to understand not just what each other does, but also how we interact with each other and how we build successful relationships across the world.
Yeah, it's such an important point. And one thing that popped into my head when you were talking about it is just that there's no person, if you're talking about a company and we're, happen to be in corporate America, but really across the globe, whatever your company is, there's no one person that's insignificant, that's a participant in your company. There's no one who's small in the process. Everyone needs each other, from the payroll analyst who's making sure all the checks get signed and sent out, to the person who's in compliance, making sure that you're meeting all of the government standards. Like, every single person has a very important role within the company. However, we as humans oftentimes only appreciate what we understand or what we have maybe seen in action. So I like to use help desk as an example of this, because I think a lot of times they're one of the groups that I find wildly undervalued. You have a help desk analyst who has to be able to answer questions for, why won't my work laptop print on my personal printer? Those kind of questions that you kind of just kind of like face palm or like slam your head against a wall, maybe. I don't know. But you also have those questions, but you have really difficult questions too, like very like cybersecurity attacks. A lot of times your help desk is going to be some of the ones who, maybe operations figures it out first, but help desk has to be on the front lines trying to resolve these things. Disaster recovery scenarios with your whole business continuity plan getting kicked off. A lot of times that kicks off with help desk. I mean, they're an incredibly integral part of the organization, and what they do really, really matters. So I think one of the things I find most valuable about having these conversations with Andrew and with the other people who've been able to join us so far, and any future conversations we have, is taking the time to push yourself to that higher level. Let's not go with just the primal pack bond with my people, we're a group, so we're going to bond together and we're going to throw stuff at other people and be annoyed with them. Let's take ourselves to that next level. Let's try and see it from another person's perspective. Let's try and understand and appreciate what they're bringing to the table, because that helps us broaden that group, right? So now our community that Andrew's talking about isn't just the people I work directly with. My community becomes my entire organization, and I can start talking to them as a sympathetic partner as we address problems and we try and grow and evolve our business. Because I think we can all agree these humans that are doing the work, they're the most important asset that a company has.
You made a really good comment there very, very early on that was something to the effect of no one person is less than another. And a thing that So my wife and I are, engaged in our local community, and she more than I by a long shot. The there was an early instance in her career in nonprofit management in which she had I'm going to say a manager intentionally, not using the term leader. They were a poor leader, a decent manager. That when she looked for extra opportunity or places to grow and areas to gain more responsibility, she was told she was not management material. And that's a direct quote, by the way. But the I see the fire in Jess's eyes. I like that. But it's such a poor way to treat people, because everything that we're espousing is that, look, my title may be VP of software engineering or CTO or CIO or CEO, but I'm simply a different role. I have different accountability, maybe expanded accountability. And so my butt may be on the line more than the senior software engineer or whatever. But if I look at my team, my department, my division, my company as a group of people that are trying to solve a goal, solve a problem, then that puts me in a better position to be successful. And so that comment of not management material it has been a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek comment or potential future podcast for us, who knows, around how you really lead people and engage with people and make sure that they feel valued and make sure that you're gaining value out of them. Because if you sit there with the perspective of, well, your title's not VP, your title's not manager or whatever, then you can't possibly understand the strategy we're trying to develop. You're in for a bad time.
Here, you failed then. If you tell your employee that works for you that they can't possibly understand the strategy that your leadership team has put together, you're the one who's failing them. Because, and I think this is attributed to Einstein as a quote, but I don't know if it was actually him. It was basically saying, if you can't explain something in simple terms, you don't understand it well enough yourself. That is a coward's way of dealing with pushback from an employee. And I have no tolerance for it. I'm sorry.
What was the other quote? I think it was also attributed to Einstein, but if you grade a fish on its ability to fly, then the fish will always believe it's stupid.
Yeah.
That was.
And now I don't know if these were actually things said by Einstein, but the wisdom, and the name fit together, so I'll go with it. I think the point here is that when you're starting to work as a leader over people, you have a very important shift that you need to make in your mind. And just like title wise, I, have, maybe a team underneath me, maybe I don't, whatever. But if you want to be a leader within your organization, it does take a different mental mindset. And a lot of times, I'm sure all of you have seen this as well, somebody will get promoted because they're really good at doing a job. So this person is really, really great at being a project manager. They're the best project manager you've ever seen. You're like, oh, I want everyone to be like you. I'm going to promote you as the manager of project managers. And a lot of times, without the proper guidance, that can set them up to fail because they are still thinking of themselves as the best project manager, not the person who's leading the team of people who need to be project managers. And I myself have fallen into this trap as well when I get really busy about execution and I forget that I have a team that I need to help bring along so that they can execute. And I think any manager who's ever been in a stressful situation where you just have to get stuff done, you can fall into this trap too. Just really micromanaging, just taking on stuff yourself, getting it done because you have to execute. And you really do need to consciously take a step back and go, okay, am I enabling my team to execute more effectively, or am I taking work off of their plate because I just want to see it get done? And it's a really important conversation to have.
Well, moving from that GSD mentality into a growth
Yeah.
mentality, it it requires you to change your perspective from one of just getting the job done to one that is more focused on helping people get the job done.
Yeah.
And there's a weird balance we have to strike as leaders where on one hand it is very much beneficial for you to delegate tasks and to delegate vision and to make sure that the rest of your team are executing in the direction that you want everybody to go. But on the other hand, there's times where you have this vision that you individually may know how to execute, but your team doesn't. And that's where it gets kind of interesting because you can have your VP CXO title and you can be saying, well, we need to do digital transformation. We need to institute agile work management.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on the organization you're in, everybody may be looking at you like, yeah, I'm all on board. I get it. I see the value. I don't know how
How?
to do it. I've never done it
Yeah.
before. And so I,
Yeah.
I had an instance a couple of times in recent history where my so I've done a disc profile as part of my current employer, but it's also interesting from a personality perspective, understanding what I value intrinsically. But if you don't know, I'm a fairly strong D, which means I'm after results. And I'm I can often, from a weak point standpoint, I can get lost in the analysis and skip over several steps and just say I need to make a decision. We're going to move forward, and if it doesn't work, we'll pivot, which is great about Agile. It really supports my personality flaws. But what's happened a couple of times is the D in me will come out strong and like, all right, we've got to get this done. And I know that we're trying to make this agile transformation. I know that we're trying to make this architectural transformation. Look, let's just get on a call and work through this. And what's happened is I'll wind up screen sharing or, you know, drawing out. Now that my MacBook allows me to use my iPhone as a external camera source, I'll sit here with my paper on my desk and draw it out. Whatever that looks like, I'll wind up doing the task, or at least the first, 2 or 3 steps of the task. And I had one person after I'd done that, I felt this twinge of, say, guilt of crud. I shouldn't have just done that. I should have led the person through it. I should have helped educate them along the way and made them do it while I helped them. But they made the comment after we got done with it and was like, "Thank you for your leadership." And it made me realize a very important lesson. And that is that sometimes leadership means rolling up your sleeves. So when you see the job descriptions out there that say, we're a startup, we're looking for the roll up your sleeves type of leader, that doesn't just mean we're looking for a senior developer that can also be a head of technology. We're not trying to get more for our money than we're able to right now. It does mean that maybe we don't have the maturity in our organization right now, and we need to build that up. So we need the person that has done the job. And Jess, you've done it time and time again. I've seen it. It's like you and I both went through this process of, I'll say, reinventing the wheel, but it's almost like we had to reason our way backwards from what we thought made sense into what was industry standard.
Yeah.
Because if you start out with the industry standard, it doesn't, like, I'm not just going to blindly accept it.
Well, and more than that, it's hard to go industry standard and figure out how that translates into reality, because what you're seeing on paper is the pretty version of reality. It's never the actual reality of it. So translating it into real life it's messier than, this 5-step program that will lead you to your goal. It's never quite that.
no plan survives first contact with the enemy, right?
Well, and it's funny because as you're talking, I was thinking about some times that I failed, right? And we all have. We're human. We're going to fail. And one particular instance, I had this colleague that I gave very wide parameters. Go do this thing. I don't know what your job role looks like exactly, but I think you're great and I wanted to invest in you and I think you have a future here. And it didn't go well. Like they ended up leaving the company. They did not have a good experience under my leadership. And I kicked myself for a long time trying to figure out like what happened there because it was very conflicting feedback that I got from them. You're micromanaging me, but you're also too broad and you don't give me any direction. And I was like, I don't get it. And I think sometimes, well, I mean, sometimes you're not gonna click with someone, and that is what it is, unfortunately. But I think in that scenario, one thing that I learned from that was kind of what Andrew's talking about. Giving the broad parameters is great. Walking them through the first couple of steps is great, but then letting them take those next steps themselves without, okay, I want you to do X, Y, Z. I'm not seeing results from this person, so I'm telling them, I want you to do X, Y, Z, get those things done, come back when you're done with those. Okay, you didn't do those. What do I do now? So it kind of goes back to this whole concept of appreciating where people are coming from and meeting them where they're at. So understanding the individuals within your stewardship as a leader. And this can kind of translate across the board as well, not just people that you're your direct reports, right? This is the peers that you have to lead, that you need to be a part of the conversation with them. And even more so in these scenarios, you don't have the authority to manage them. But what you can do is you can influence them by partnership and collaboration and communication to help better understand where they're coming from and hopefully help them better understand where you're coming from so that you can negotiate and come to a compromise on how you need to move forward. But I mean, these skills translate no matter where you are in an organization.
Well, I'll take a good example, and this kind of ties back to my initial thought of why would a non-tech person want to listen to this podcast. I do have a good friend, and he'll know who I'm talking about when he hears it. But I do have a good friend that's a listener that will text me after every episode or so and say, "Man, this topic was really good." And for Jess and I, we're very well ensconced in corporate America, technology division, delivery of software. But this guy, I don't even know how to describe him. He's an entrepreneur. He's an audio engineer. He's an influencer. He does a lot of stuff, and he's really good at it. But I would not call him corporate America, right? But so he's taking some of the topics that we're discussing, and he texts me back and says, the topic of anecdotal success that Jess brought up with him as a business owner. He said, "Man, this was really a kick in the pants." And I got to thinking that while we do get into the weeds of technology delivery or corporate structure, there's concepts here that transcend your typical business organization. Like, you don't have to have a department of 20 people or 40 people to apply some of this stuff. And when we talk about giving respect and value to all the roles across the board, it doesn't even have to be in your own company. Each one of us, whether we're engaging in our work communities or our social communities or our geographical communities, we're responsible for what we build. We're responsible for what we bring to the table. And we have a choice every single time we interact with somebody to either build them up or tear them down. And that's similar to what we do with software. We're either building new software, we're maintaining it, or we're tearing it down and replacing it with something else. And so everything that we provide, everything that we put in, all the effort that we go through, whether it's through a confrontation with an individual or a department or a challenge with our own interpretation of what we should be doing or can be doing, every time we interact with somebody or interact with something, we have the choice. Are we building up or are we tearing down? And when we talk about playing well with others, all of this comes down to, I need to understand what your motivations are. I need to understand what it is that is important to you so that I can best engage with you, so that I can express what's important to me, and we can all put our important things on the table and we can mix them around and see what makes business work. Whether you're selling software, whether you're doing IT support, whether you're a dev relations specialist, or in the the case of my friend,
List goes on.
Right. Maybe you're selling a digital audio workstation and you're doing content in that regard. But in any case, you're given the choice. You're given the chance. Do I build this person up? Do I build this company up? Do I build this department? Whatever it is. Do I build them up? Do I tear them down? Mm-hmm. Or do I just keep it in autopilot and not do anything? And all of that is how you're reflected, how you're valued within whatever community that happens to be in.
Yeah, and I do think something that you kind of mentioned got me thinking about, how we manage relationships within an organization and why something, not to kind of, maybe I should sell us, but to kind of sell what we're talking about here, I think it's important for people to think through these items and kind of understand these concepts and really think about things from other people's perspectives, because when you're working within an organization, there are always going to be more factors at play than you understand. And by allowing, how do I want to say this without being offensive? Sometimes people are just difficult to deal with. There are just people that I work with that it's like a foregone conclusion that if you've had a conversation with them, you're probably not in the best headspace. There are just people like that in every organization I've ever worked in that,
shoot, I'm one of them sometimes.
Probably all are at some point in time. But if you kind of come from it from the perspective that Andrew's talking about, of trying to see their side of the story, trying to understand their viewpoint, what they do becomes less malicious towards you, which can be how it feels sometimes. It can feel targeted and malicious, but 90% of the time it's not. 90% of the time it's just they have an agenda and you are an obstacle to them achieving their agenda. And so the conversation then can shift of, okay, I'm not an obstacle. So how do I have a conversation with them where I position myself on their side of the table and we start attacking a problem rather than attacking a person?
Yes. And there's a whole lot there. There's a lot of great stuff to dig into. We are coming up on time, but I'm going to use that statement because Jess is just a wizard at teeing up the next conversation. So we have a guest coming on soon that is not a technical person, which is great because I told you this wasn't a technology podcast, but working on getting this person in. But they're more on the account management sales side of things, which digs into that problem or that mm-hmm. awareness, that observation where I'm having to support a product or a service to external clients. How do I do that without trusting that my back office has my back and that we're able to, as a company, really address our customers or our users' needs?
As a salesperson, you're not only selling externally, sometimes you're also selling what you need to get accomplished to your internal team as well. And so it can be a very tricky place to be.
And there's a whole lot of topics there because that's also an issue that we approach in technology and engineering. I've got mm-hmm. internal tech debt that I need to pay back because someday that tech debt's going to come knocking
It's going to
and it's going to be
explode.
a problem, right? Or in product, we have these features or this functionality that we need to deliver because
Hmm.
otherwise our users are going to be experiencing significant abrasion. We're going to miss an opportunity in the industry, what have you. Or external sales in a service role, we're going to bleed these smaller contracts and we're not going to pay attention because we've been experiencing anecdotal success because we haven't lost the big contracts. All of these fit together, and the concept of plays well with others, a lot of us have the same motivations or the same needs. They're just
Yeah.
different details. And so
Different
I'm
perspectives, all trying to reach the same goal.
exactly. And once again, with Jess's comment, different perspectives all trying to reach the same goal. That's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to expose those perspectives. And with that, I'm going to wrap us up. This has been episode 9 of Plays Well with Others. As a reminder, I'm Andrew Moore, joined by my illustrious co host, Jess Agnew. Remember to like, share, subscribe, whatever the terminology is, in whatever app you're using or on whatever platform. All of your support and your engagement is much appreciated, and we're looking forward to continuing this process with y'all. Thanks for listening.